During the Cold War, the race wasn't just in space, it was also in the fields. The Soviet Union poured power, steel, and ambition into building tractors that could rival the mighty John Deere. Some were brilliant, others bizarre, massive, overbuilt, and ahead of their time in ways few expected. But despite their strength, they couldn't conquer the Green Giant from America. This is the story of the 10 Soviet tractors that tried to beat John Deere and lost, a tale of power, pride, and machines that came close to greatness. Number 1. Belarus MTZ-50, 1961 to 1985. The Belarus MTZ-50 was the Soviet Union's pride, a tractor that symbolized self-reliance, progress, and agricultural power. Introduced in 1961 by the Minsk Tractor Works (MTZ), it was designed to be the USSR's all-purpose machine, the people's tractor, built for every farm from the Baltic to Siberia. On paper, it looked promising: a 55-horsepower 4-cylinder diesel engine, a live PTO, a 3-point hitch, and hydraulics similar to those found in American tractors like the John Deere 3010. The goal was to create a machine that could rival Deere in function while being simpler and cheaper to produce. And for a while, it seemed to work. The MTZ-50 was strong, durable, and easy to repair. It could survive the harshest winters, pulling plows through snow and mud when Western tractors would freeze or stall. Farmers loved that it could run on low-quality diesel and still get the job done. It was the very definition of rugged. But its weaknesses were just as legendary. The gearbox was clunky, the clutch prone to slipping, and the hydraulic system leaked constantly. The ride was rough. A full day on an MTZ-50 left operators with ringing ears and sore backs. Compared to the smooth, ergonomic design of a John Deere, the Belarus felt like driving a steel box full of hammers. Yet, the MTZ-50 refused to fade. It was exported to more than 100 countries, becoming a global symbol of Soviet utility. In Africa, Asia, and Eastern Europe, it earned respect, not because it was refined, but because it was unkillable. Even today, some MTZ-50s still run, belching smoke and rattling like they always did, proof that Soviet steel had staying power. The MTZ-50 didn't beat John Deere in comfort, technology, or quality, but it became something Deere could never be: a tractor for the toughest, poorest, and most resilient farms on Earth. Number 2. KhTZ T-150K, 1971 to present. When the Soviet Union introduced the KhTZ T-150K in 1971, it wanted to make a statement. We can build tractors as powerful as the Americans. Built in Kharkiv, Ukraine, the T-150K was designed as a heavy, four-wheel drive machine that could rival the mighty John Deere 5020 and later the 8630. At first glance, the T-150K looked like something straight out of a Cold War factory floor. Tall, boxy, and painted in dull industrial yellow. Its 150 horsepower Yams diesel engine was a brute, capable of plowing vast collective farms with ease. The tractor featured an articulated chassis for better maneuverability, giving it surprising agility for its size. On the open step, it could pull a 6-bottom plow like it was nothing. But while John Deere focused on making tractors that were easy and comfortable to drive, the Soviets built theirs to survive nuclear war. The T-150K had zero focus on ergonomics. The cab was uninsulated and deafeningly loud, the air inside filled with diesel fumes, dust, and vibration. After an hour inside, most operators described the feeling as being shaken in a paint can. Reliability was also hit or miss. Some units ran flawlessly for years, while others suffered constant failures, leaking hydraulics, seized gears, and broken drive shafts. Spare parts were hard to find, especially in remote areas, so farmers often made their own fixes using scrap metal or welding torches. A saying in Ukraine went, "If you can fix a T-150K, you can fix anything." Despite its flaws, the T-150K became one of the most enduring Soviet tractors. It worked in deserts, tundras, and mountains. Its raw power was undeniable. It could outpull nearly any Western machine in a straight contest of strength. But in efficiency, comfort, and longevity, it lost to John Deere's engineering precision. The T-150K was the Soviet dream in a nutshell. Huge, ambitious, and unstoppable in spirit. but hopelessly crude in execution. Number 3. Kirovets K-700, 1962 to 2002. The Kirovets K-700 wasn't just a tractor, it was a monster. Built in Leningrad beginning in 1962, this colossal machine was the Soviet answer to John Deere's high-horsepower tractors like the 5010 and later 8630 series. Powered by a 215-horsepower V8 diesel engine, the K-700 was one of the most powerful tractors of its era. It was designed for massive collective farms, where thousands of acres needed to be plowed quickly. The Soviet leadership called it the tractor of the future. Farmers, on the other hand, called it Zolty Zver, the yellow beast. And a beast it was. The K-700's articulated frame allowed it to bend at the center, improving its maneuverability despite its size. It could pull up to a dozen plows at once and was strong enough to double as a bulldozer or heavy hauler. Its sheer presence was intimidating. Standing next to it, you felt small. When it roared to life, it sounded like a tank charging into battle. But the K-700 had problems, lots of them. It guzzled fuel like a jet engine, often burning more diesel than entire smaller tractors combined. Its cabin was a nightmare, no suspension, no insulation, and a seat that shook with every bump. Many operators wore earplugs just to survive their shifts. Unlike John Deere's tractors, which prioritized comfort and control, the K-700 punished the people who drove it. Maintenance was another headache. The complex hydraulic and transmission systems required constant attention, and Soviet manufacturing quality control was inconsistent. Some K-700s were nearly flawless, others broke down after a few months. Still, thanks to Soviet stubbornness and endless repair ingenuity, they stayed running, often patched together with wire, welds, and prayers. Despite all that, the K-700 became a Cold War icon. It represented the USSR's belief in brute force over finesse. It couldn't beat John Deere in design or reliability, but it could plow through frozen soil at 40 below zero. Even today, some K-700s still work the fields in Russia and Kazakhstan, loud, smoky, and unrepentant. It didn't win the race against John Deere, but it won the title of the toughest tractor ever built in Soviet history. Number 4. DT-54, 1949 to 1979. Before the sleek-wheeled tractors of the Cold War era, there was one machine that truly built the Soviet countryside, the DT-54. Produced by factories in Stalingrad and Kharkiv from 1949 to 1979, this steel crawler became the backbone of post-war agriculture. It was the first mass-produced diesel-powered track tractor in the USSR, and it symbolized the country's recovery after World War II. The DT-54 was designed to do it all: plow, pull, clear forests, and even work in industrial construction. Its 54-horsepower four-cylinder diesel engine wasn't fast, but it was incredibly reliable. Its design wasn't purely Soviet, though. The DT-54 was heavily influenced by Caterpillar's D2 and D4 models from the 1930s, which the USSR studied closely before the Iron Curtain fell. However, while Caterpillar focused on precision and operator comfort, the Soviets focused on durability and simplicity. The DT-54 could be repaired anywhere, even in a village with no workshop. It was also designed to handle the USSR's extreme conditions, whether it was minus 40 degrees Celsius in Siberia or blistering heat in Kazakhstan. The DT-54 would start, eventually, and get the job done. It crawled slowly across fields, tearing through mud and snow where wheeled tractors would sink. But if you were the one driving it, you paid the price. The open cab exposed drivers to wind, dust, and exhaust fumes. Steering required physical strength, and vibrations could numb your arms after hours of work. Operators joked that driving a DT-54 builds muscles faster than the gym. Still, it was beloved, not because it was comfortable, but because it was dependable. Farmers trusted it. For 3 decades, it plowed more Soviet soil than any other tractor. By the late 1970s, it was obsolete. John Deere had already moved on to powerful, efficient diesels with enclosed cabs and precision hydraulics. But the DT-54 left an undeniable mark. It turned barren land into farmland. powered reconstruction, and defined the Soviet work ethic, slow, hard, and relentless. Number 5. T-40, 1961 to 1995. When the T-40 rolled out of the Lipetsk tractor plant in 1961, it was supposed to be the Soviet Union's answer to John Deere's smaller farm tractors, something like the John Deere 2020 or 2030 series. Compact, simple, and built for small collective farms, it aimed to bring power to the peasants. The T-40 was powered by a 38-horsepower four-cylinder diesel engine that could run on low-quality fuel, an advantage in a country where diesel purity was unpredictable at best. It featured rear-wheel drive with optional front assist, a solid frame, and a ground clearance high enough to maneuver over furrows and uneven fields. On paper, it was practical, reliable, and affordable. In the field, however, the T-40 was a mixed bag. It was nearly indestructible but brutally uncomfortable. Its vibrations could rattle your teeth, and its crude suspension made every bump feel like a body blow. The gear shifter was awkwardly placed, and the clutch demanded leg strength worthy of a weightlifter. The seat, a metal plate with a thin pad that felt like sitting on a rock. Still, the T-40 worked. It was perfect for small farms, orchards, and vineyards, places where big tractors couldn't fit. It could plow, haul, seed, mow, and even act as a makeshift snowplow. Farmers loved its simplicity. With just a few tools, you could rebuild the entire engine in a barn. Many owners developed creative modifications, adding homemade cabs, heaters, or hydraulic assists. Compared to John Deere, the T-40 lagged in refinement. Deere's machines were smooth, fuel-efficient, and comfortable, the kind of tractor you could drive all day without feeling broken. The T-40 was the opposite, reliable but punishing, efficient but joyless. Yet in the vast fields of Eastern Europe and Central Asia, it kept going, decade after decade. By the 1990s, long after its production ended, T-40s were still working in dusty fields. Their paint faded but their engines steady. It never beat John Deere on paper, but in the real world, it earned a kind of admiration only Soviet machinery could inspire, rough, resilient, and unkillable. Number 6. DT-75, 1963 to present. If there's one Soviet tractor that truly deserves the word immortal, it's the DT-75. Introduced in 1963 by the Volgograd tractor plant, this track-driven machine became the backbone of Soviet mechanized agriculture, and remarkably, it's still being produced today, more than 60 years later. The DT-75 was designed as a medium crawler tractor, filling the gap between the smaller DT-54 and the massive Kirovets series. Powered by a 95-horsepower diesel engine, it wasn't fast, but it was almost unstoppable. It could pull heavy plows, operate in muddy terrain, and even work in snow where wheeled tractors failed. The Soviet planners loved it because it was adaptable. It could be fitted for farming, forestry, construction, or even military use. Its design was simple: a steel body, a tough gearbox, and wide tracks for stability. Maintenance was straightforward, and the machine could be repaired with basic tools. But if you were expecting comfort, forget it. The DT-75's cabin was cramped and noisy, filled with diesel fumes and rattling metal. Visibility was poor, and the vibration made long hours unbearable. It had the soul of a tank, strong but merciless. Still, it worked, and it worked everywhere. From the Siberian tundra to the deserts of Kazakhstan, the DT-75 kept the Soviet farming machine alive. It became a national symbol of endurance. Operators said it ate mud for breakfast and could run for decades without a major overhaul. When the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, most of its factories shut down. But the DT-75 survived. Production continued under new management, and updated models are still being sold under names like Volgodut and Altai, while John Deere moved on to GPS-guided tractors with climate-controlled cabs. The DT-75 remained a steel dinosaur, one that refuses to die. It never won the race in innovation, but it won the war of longevity. Even today, a DT-75 starting up in the cold Russian dawn sounds like a heartbeat of an empire that's gone but not forgotten. Number 7. T-16, 1961 to 1995. If Soviet tractors had personalities, the T-16 would be the oddball of the bunch. Produced at the KhTZ tractor plant from 1961, it wasn't really a tractor, it was a bizarre hybrid of a farm vehicle and a small truck, yet it became one of the most recognizable sights in rural Eastern Europe. With its 16 horsepower, 2-cylinder diesel engine, rear cargo bed, and forward driver's seat, the T16 looked more like a baby dump truck than a tractor. But that design gave it unique versatility. Farmers could use it to haul crops, carry tools, transport people, or plow small plots. It was the Soviet version of a compact utility vehicle, decades before John Deere introduced the Gator. The T16's biggest strength was its practicality. It could carry up to 500 kg of goods and still manage basic fieldwork. It was light, cheap, and easy to maintain. Rural families used it for everything: hauling hay, delivering milk, transporting potatoes, even taking kids to school in the countryside. But it was far from perfect. Its design was top-heavy, which made it prone to tipping over, especially on uneven ground. The steering was unsteady, and the brakes were weak. The open cab offered no protection from weather, and the engine was painfully underpowered on inclines. Many drivers joked that the T16 didn't climb hills, it begged them for mercy. John Deere, meanwhile, was already perfecting compact, efficient utility tractors that offered comfort, safety, and modern hydraulics. The T16 felt prehistoric by comparison. But for rural Soviet farmers, it was irreplaceable, cheap, rugged, and endlessly useful. The T16 became so ingrained in village life that it earned nicknames like Matoliga, the grasshopper, for its odd hopping ride. Even now, many still operate in small farms across Ukraine and Belarus, rusty but alive, just like the people who drove them. The T16 didn't beat John Deere, but it captured something more human, a symbol of survival and ingenuity in hard times. Number 8. T-74, 1957 to 1983. Before the giant Kirovets tractors roared across Soviet fields, there was the T-74, a mid-size crawler tractor built for the endless plains of the USSR. Produced at the KhTZ tractor plant beginning in 1957, it was designed as an upgrade over the aging DT-54, with more power, smoother operation, and better reliability. The T-74 featured a 75-horsepower diesel engine and a track-based design that gave it excellent traction in soft or muddy terrain. It was used everywhere, plowing massive collective farms, building roads, clearing snow, and hauling heavy loads. It was a true general-purpose machine. Mechanically, the T-74 was solid. It had a robust transmission, heavy-duty steel tracks, and a simple diesel system that could run on almost anything. Farmers called it the ox because it would pull until the job was done, no matter how hard the soil or how deep the mud. But in typical Soviet fashion, comfort was an afterthought. The cab was cramped and uninsulated, steering required both hands and brute force. The tractor's suspension was non-existent, and every jolt from the terrain transferred straight to the operator's spine. It was work, not driving. Compared to the John Deere 4010, which by the 1960s featured smooth hydraulics and power steering, the T-74 felt decades behind. Yet for the Soviet Union, it was a triumph. Tough, reliable, and simple to mass produce. Millions of T-74s were built, and many continued to serve through the 1980s, some even into the 2000s. Like most Soviet machines, they were loud, smoky, and inefficient, but they were also impossible to kill. You could leave one sitting for 10 years, pour in diesel, and it would likely start. The T-74 was never a match for John Deere in design finesse, but it symbolized the Soviet way, raw, relentless, and ready to work in conditions where most machines wouldn't even start. Number 9. KhTZ 1530, 1931 to 1952. Long before the Cold War, the Soviets set out to create their first modern tractor, and they did it the old-fashioned way, by copying the Americans. The KhTZ 1530, produced from 1931 to 1952, was a near-exact replica of the International Harvester 1530, itself a predecessor to the early John Deere competition. Built at the KhTZ tractor plant, This machine was powered by a 4-cylinder kerosene engine with around 30 horsepower, using steel-cleated wheels and a chain drive system. It was primitive by Western standards, loud, rough and slow, but it changed Soviet farming forever. At a time when most Soviet peasants still relied on horses and plows, the KhTZ T-150 brought mechanization to the countryside. It could pull a 3-bottom plow, run threshers, and cover in hours what used to take days by hand. However, as impressive as it seemed at home, it was decades behind John Deere's technology. American tractors were already moving to pneumatic tires, efficient gasoline engines, and comfortable seats. The KhTZ T-150 was a noisy, heavy brute that shook itself apart if driven too fast. But it served its purpose. It industrialized Soviet agriculture. Thousands of these machines were shipped across the USSR, helping feed millions during Stalin's 5-year plans. By the 1950s, it was obsolete, replaced by the DT-54 and other diesel models. Yet without it, none of the Soviet tractors that followed would have existed. It didn't beat John Deere, but it started the race. Number 10. MTZ-82, 1974 to present. If there was one Soviet tractor that almost reached John Deere's level, it was the MTZ-82, also known simply as the Belarus 82. Introduced in 1974 by the Minsk Tractor Works, the MTZ-82 was a modernized version of the MTZ-50. It packed an 80-horsepower diesel engine, 4-wheel drive, live hydraulics, and a fully enclosed cab. For once, the Soviets got it right. The MTZ-82 was powerful, versatile, and easy to maintain. The design was clean and functional. Farmers could attach plows, mowers, seeders, and even industrial equipment. It became the USSR's most exported tractor, reaching over 100 countries. Many African and Asian nations still use it today. But even with all its improvements, it couldn't outshine John Deere. The Deere 4040 or 4240 of the same era had more comfort, precision hydraulics, smoother shifting, and far superior build quality. The MTZ-82's cab was still noisy, its hydraulics rough, and its wiring unreliable. Yet, it earned a legendary reputation for one reason: it worked anywhere. Whether in freezing Siberia, desert Africa, or the mountains of Iran, it kept running. Farmers loved it for its simplicity. If something broke, you could fix it with basic tools. The MTZ-82 remains in production, even today, virtually unchanged. Proof that while it never beat John Deere in technology, it won the battle of endurance and affordability. It was the closest the Soviet Union ever came to true agricultural parity with the West. A machine that didn't win, but never truly lost either. For half a century, the Soviet Union tried to outbuild John Deere. They failed, not for lack of effort, but because their focus was different. John Deere built machines of comfort and precision. The Soviets built machines of endurance and necessity. Their tractors were heavy, rough, and inefficient, but they worked in the world's harshest places. They didn't win the competition, but they earned something more timeless: respect. Even today, somewhere in a frozen Russian field, an old Belarus or Kirovets still rattles to life. And in that moment, it doesn't matter who won, because both East and West built machines that made the earth move. So that's it for today. If you like this video, then please hit the like and subscribe button for more videos. Thanks for watching.